Something that many people might not know about me is that before I studied architecture, I actually studied philosophy. So I have a degree in philosophy that was let's say my first career. Now, my parents would say, well, what can you really do with philosophy? It's not a career. But one of the reasons I studied philosophy was that I was always extremely interested in questions of meaning. My name is Carlos Arnaiz. I'm an architect and now run my own office out of New York City. I guess this church is quite different. Many people who have come to our office and seen the models, or friends and colleagues or clients have seen the drawings, are quite surprised about the building initially as a kind of aesthetic object. The interior layout of the church is quite interesting because it has, you might say, two sides or two faces to it. From one angle, it's very open, and from the other, it's very closed. And we wanted to create a church that from the closed side appeared mysterious, appeared as a kind of monument that makes you very curious about it and makes you want to discover what is there. But from the other side is actually very welcoming. If you look at the church, if you were to have a plan in front of you, you would see that there is this sort of field of walls, and they're almost like trees in a forest. But those trees that appear at first quite maybe disorganized, even chaotic, have a very clear order under it. And to some degree, there's that you might say was part of the spiritual notion behind the church, that if you think about religion as a philosophical structure, religion portends to being a system to understand our world. At first glance, our world appears sort of vastly incomprehensible and chaotic. There's so many types of people, so many races, so many places, so many ways of doing things. But religion gives it some kind of underlying order, and that is in a way the sort of conceptual basis for the layout of the church. That the walls and the way in which the walls are laid out at first seem maybe haphazard and almost wild, like a forest, but actually there is some kind of underlying order, and the order has to do with all of the walls are actually aligned only in one direction, and all of the walls are actually following a very strict grid, and that grid comes from the spacing of the pews. So the pew becomes the starting point. This distance between each pew becomes a grid, and from that grid all of the walls are placed. Now there also is a kind of internal hierarchy, because the taller walls are holding taller roofs and the smaller walls are holding less load. So in a way there is a kind of structural logic to the walls. Now, it's been difficult really because the challenge of designing a church is extremely difficult. What is a church today? That's a sort of totally open question. There are clearly design parameters for a historic church. We know what a church looked like in 15th century. We know what a church looked like in 18th century. But I don't really know we know what a church looks like in the 21st century. So that was maybe one of the most difficult challenges. I would have to say that when we started the project, we didn't know what it would look like. I didn't have a sketch. I don't believe in, this is going to be funny, but I believe that our process in the office is is maybe 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration. In the sense that, we just work and look at different options and keep on figuring out many options, and eventually you'll come up with something that you didn't even know you could come up with.